Hi. I'm not sure how recording this podcast outside will go. You're just gonna get a lot of sounds from the elements and my neighbor's wind chimes. We're just experimenting with it. We're rolling with it. I'm here in my backyard. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, I'm here in my backyard right next to up against my little fairy homes and this tree that we call Warren because I feel safe here and I just want to be outside. It is gorgeous. The sun's right on me. The wind's blowing, so you're going to hear a lot of that. I'll try to pause for the wind. Um and I'm here to talk about the name behind this podcast. So if you're new here, this podcast is called Sister Sam, which if you clicked on this video or this podcast, then you saw that it's called Sister Sam. And if you know me personally in my real life, I'm using like air quotes because as if like this digital world is not my real life. It's like a part of my real life, but if you know me in my personal life, then you know um, my story. If you don't know the entire thing, I will probably save that for another episode, but I do want to share that on here as we get to know each other on this podcast as people start to listen and get familiar. I think it's important to start any sort of like project where there's some sort of relationship being built that we ease into it just like we would in any like friendship um, or partnership relationship because that's how I see this podcast as well. But to get into it, this podcast episode, this is episode number 3 of Sister Sam. And today we're going to be talking about the story behind the name of the podcast, Sister Sam. So growing up, I grew up in the Christian church. I grew up in a Christian church that I feel was a lot more strict and a lot more dogmatic than, say, like mainstream, big mega church, big mega Christian church type thing. We sat sex separated, so men were on the left and women were on the right during worship services. I sang in the choir, and in the choir, I couldn't dye my hair. All the women in the church couldn't wear scandalous skirts. We had to, have it below the knee, cover as much as possible, no shoulders showing, that kind of thing. I'm not going to say the name of the church only because I think that with this platform, it's also important to protect those who are affiliated with the church. And if you know me in real life, you know which church it is, and I don't have to answer that here. That's just like a boundary that I have because I have been sharing this story in many different forms over the years. But that is sort of like the origin story of Sister Sam. So in this church, we call each other brother and sister because we are brothers and sisters in the faith in this church. And I still see the world kind of that way, but instead of it just being exclusive to, this organization, this group of people, that they're my siblings, I now see, I see all of us as a global community, as brothers and sisters of the planet. And in having that perspective or that point of view, I think it's a beautiful way to engage with each other, with strangers, especially if we see them as like, I don't know you very well, but our planet is mother, and that makes you my sibling. Like a little bit more loving way to interact with a stranger, I think, in my opinion. And siblings fight too. It's not all just like love. It's not all just love and light all the time, and that's okay. So, in the church I grew up in, people called me Sister Sam, and I really loved it because it made me feel um important. It made me feel, closer to these people. And in 2018, I had my daughter Cora, and when that happened, because I, you know, had her out of wedlock, with somebody who's not in the church, I was expelled. And there's a lot that happened because of that, but that's not what we're going to talk about in today's episode. We're going to talk about the name Sister Sam. And so when that happened, when I went through that, I wasn't being called Sister Sam by many people. It was a slow process of um, people who did call me that in the church, slowly, drifting away, cutting ties. And I didn't feel that sense of like community or, specialness by somebody, because that name that I was called was not necessary for me to be called. And there's also this thing that happens when you grow up in a community and you're called a certain thing, and then when you're exiled or expelled from the community, people still in that community, there's this weird culture of like, well, do I still call you sister? Do I still call you this if you're not officially like part of this community? And then I started to sit with it like, what does this name or like this title mean to me personally? And I've been sitting on the seeds of this podcast for quite some time, thinking, what do I want to talk about? What do I want to share? How do I want to engage with an audience? And what will I call it, And so with this podcast, I'll be talking about a lot of things because I like a lot of things, but primarily what drove me to create this space for these sisterly conversations was the fact that I was having so many beautiful stories about people who grew up in the Christian church or grew up in religion, and we all had like similar stories of feeling like we didn't belong, feeling like something wasn't right, feeling like we were done wrong, honestly, by the church and the people in the church. And I think those stories need to be shared because, at least in the realms of the internets that I find myself in, with spirituality and mysticism and energy and stuff like that, like, there are so many people who came from, the Catholic Church, the Christian Church, whatever. And I hear a lot of people who have come from like really like open-minded faiths, religions, and they just kind of like naturally grew into their own spiritual belief system or cosmology. And for me, that wasn't the case. It was a natural process of getting here where I am now, but um it wasn't gentle, and it wasn't really like a choice. It was kind of like I had to figure it out because um I was exiled. I was removed. My belonging was taken away. My perceived belonging was taken away. So coming back to Sister Sam. Who is Sister Sam? Sister Sam is somebody you can rely on. Sister Sam is somebody you can have those hard conversations with. Sister Sam is somebody you can go to when you feel like you can't talk about something with anybody else. I feel a sense of responsibility to my community and those who keep up with me, those in my life, to be honest about my experiences, especially if I'm, stepping into this role of teacher, spiritual practitioner. I think it's important that I be honest and transparent as much that I feel comfortable about my story, how I got here, my process of learning and growing throughout it all. And I want to be somebody that can offer a space, whether that's just by listening to this podcast, watching me on YouTube, or, more intimately engaging in my work in one on one or in groups, whatever that means, that you feel as much as possible, because I can't make you feel safe. I can only open the space and say, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm offering. If you feel, you know, if you feel safe with me, I am open to sharing that space with you and investigating what needs to be investigated. And I won't, it's important to me that in any relationship I choose to engage with or cultivate or nourish, that it's not just about the transaction. Like, I love when people listen to this podcast. I was like looking ahead, like I had like 7 listens and 5 different people who have listened to it so far, and that's like so exciting to me, because it's, even though like that's like a single digit number, it just made me feel like there's hope, like that what I'm sharing needs to be heard, and there are people who are feeling seen and held and acknowledged for their experiences that resonate with me as well. I hope this is making sense. I feel like I'm getting a little out or just like rambly, but I want to share, like, the name Sister Sam isn't me just trying to say like haha haha to the church that like I can still be Sister Sam. It is, don't get me wrong. That actually makes me feel really excited when like when I named this podcast. I was like, "Ooh, I like that," because in like later seasons of this podcast, I intend to like bring people in who are comfortable sharing, like, publicly as themselves or anonymously even, their own stories with the Christian church and their faith or religion in general into present time, like who God is for them and what spirituality looks like for them. And I want these conversations to feel like you're talking to a sister-like person. That's like really how I approach conversations in general. Like, I want to know what's up, really. Like, I want to meet you where you know, I want to meet you at your totality, not just like what you're making, not just like what you're showing to the world. Like, I want to hear how you're really doing. And so in order for me to have those sorts of relationships, I have to be the first person to kind of say like, "Hey, this is how I'm really doing. Hey, this is what I'm really experiencing." And trusting and hoping that people can also meet me there. It's a very like sisterly, vulnerable type thing to do, I think. Um, I do have 2 biological sisters of my own, and I love them so much. And sometimes I feel like, and if you guys are listening to this, hi. And sometimes I feel like I can't really have these conversations that you'll hear on this podcast with them. And that's okay. I'm not. here to shame anybody or bring anybody to a place that they're not ready to go to, but I do wanna have these conversations. And then I also have friends in my life who feel like sisters to me, who, are there for me when I'm going through something or I just don't wanna be home, but I can find a place with them and it feels like family. And there's not much else that I wanna say about it. It's just this is why I named it this way. This is the vibe, basically. When you come into this space, this podcast of mine, that you're speaking to somebody who wants to meet you where you are. And I'm gonna speak on the things that I feel like need to be spoken of, even if, like, it's, controversial, or taboo or, um, hard. Like, it's important to have hard conversations and it not be always something that we need to, like, fix or solve, but we can just explore together. And I really hope that's, like, what these conversations could be like, just like an exploration of what is happening? How did we get here? What is all of this? And exploring it in a manner that's like fun and friendly and also mysterious, and I just think of like dark feminine, that's like I love that. It's like sexy, Like talk about things like that. I want to talk about things like that. I want to talk about um the space that we create for ourselves. I want to talk about how we can relate to each other in a way that feels like a global family. And I'm coming to you in this space like, hey, I'm somebody who wants to have those conversations. I'm somebody who wants to meet you there. And I hope that you can feel safe meeting me there too. And it's not always like that. Sometimes it's light. Sometimes it's just a fun time. Like I think that we can have the heavy and we can have the light. We can have it all and sit with it with each other and explore all avenues of how we got to here without shame as much as possible, without guilt as much as possible. And throughout this, I wouldn't be a good big sister if I didn't also like give you tools for you to use and work with, questions to ponder on your own time, for you to unravel whatever you're holding. Um, some of it might be unsolicited, but hey, this is kind of like a one-way conversation right now, and I think if you're here to listen, you want that. I think if you're here listening to me, you wanna know how I got here, and you wanna know how you can also learn from me. And I will offer that because I think I do have a lot to offer, and not in like, you have to be like me, or you have to do it the way that I had did it or am doing it, but in a way that's just like, "This is what worked for me. You can try it, and then you can come back and tell me if it didn't or not." And that's okay. Doesn't mean that I failed. Doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong. Doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. This is it's life, baby. We're all just figuring it out. Trying things and failing and not trying things and wondering why, how, what's happening. So, I feel this podcast coming to a natural end and close. I feel nearly complete. And with that being said, I just hope that you continue to stick around on this journey of mine of speaking words out into the ether that is the internet. And I hope to engage with those who want to engage with me more intimately, whether that's in like a virtual community space or if you're local to where I live, in the physical spaces, in person spaces that I create. This is my work and it is deeper than how I make a living, you know? But that doesn't mean I'm not gonna charge you if you need my help. This is free. I'm just gonna speak on it real quick before I end. I actually make a lot of things for free, and people keep telling me that I need to start charging people. This is my, like, sisterly conversation now to you is, sharing, like, my journey, creating a business that's around, like, the nature of reality, energy, spirituality, healing, uh, yeah, all of those things. You'll get a lot of what I'm going through, what, um, I'm figuring out. And you also get, like, the nuggets of wisdom and advice from how I figured something else out in the past. I love business, but not in the, like, stuffy, like, "We need to invest in the stocks" kind of business, like, creative business in, mixing the practical. I have a marketing degree, I have a business degree, mixing the practical, the business side with the more, like, feminine, emotional, intuitive, mystical side to life because that feels whole. That feels like I'm looking at all that is and not fragmenting at least, like, parts of myself to satisfy the man or ride along with dominant culture. And I think I'm putting this out at, like, a really incredible time where people are looking for that. People wanna know, how can we be whole and merge the magic that we know life is with what we've got now? And I'm figuring that out so as I go. And I'm not the only one figuring that out. There are a lot of people also figuring that out, and I think it's beautiful, but you'll get my story of how I got to now in my work, in my purpose, in my life as a mother, a sisterly figure, a real sister, a friend, a lover, a partner, your earthen sibling here on our mother planet. And I hope that you enjoy these conversations. I hope that you get a lot out of it. And if you like it, I'm gonna plug now. Watch out. And if you like it, you can rate 5 stars. It does help people when you do that. You can follow me on Instagram at sam.stelluna. That's STELLUNA. You can follow my shop page at Stelluna Goods, all one word. You can check out my website that is soon to become a digital altar. I think it's already a digital altar, but I'm gonna be closing it around the new moon, this coming Monday or Tuesday, something like that, and, um, rebuilding my digital altar to be more adapted to my work. So when you approach this digital altar of mine, you're like, "Oh, okay, this is what she's about. This is what she does. This is how I can interact with the space and, um, respond to the offerings placed on the altar and be part of this, participate and support and learn alongside with me and grow alongside with me." There's a bee. I'm, like, watching the bee work. We're, like, working together. Me and the bee are working together. They're pollinating, and I'm pollinating. I'm pollinating the internets. Alright. I'm getting a little airy-fairy, probably because I'm by my fairy homes. Hello, little bee. Alright, that's all I have. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you next week, next Wednesday. All of my episodes come out on a Wednesday at 4:44 PM because I'm a little nerd about angel numbers. And, yeah, if you have any suggestions of what you wanna hear, I shared a little bit of my story of how I found myself in my own spiritual practice from the Christian church. I'll be sharing a lot about that. But if there's anything in specific that you want to hear, to I'm open to that. This is like a back and forth dialogue. In my mind, it's just a little bit more delayed and slower, which is lovely and refreshing, to be honest. All right, that's all I have. May you be well. May you feel your own magic. And may your loved ones be well and know their own magic as well. Thank you so much. Bye.